Let's get to our political big three, the three of the top stories everyone's talking about. Let's get to it. Same day, very different messages. The president and his leading intelligence officials are not on the same page, publicly at least, when it comes to Russia and the American election process. We'll play the sound. Meanwhile, the press and the press secretary remain at odds over the phrase enemy of the people. And smackdown at the ballot box. A former wrestling star, you can't make this up, wins the mayor's race in Knox County, Tennessee. Those skills might be coming in handy in this political environment these days. All right, let's get to it. The discussion with Republican commentator Jen Kerns, also Democratic activist Lauren Leader, CEO of All In Together. Ladies, thanks for being with me. Jen, I want to start with you. And this sound yesterday from White House officials, they are delivering a dire message saying that Russians' attempts to influence the midterm elections are serious. But then hours later, we heard from the president. He's calling it once again a Russian hoax. Take a listen.
The intelligence community continues to be concerned about the threats of upcoming U.S. elections, both the midterms and the presidential elections of 2020.
Our democracy itself is in the crosshairs.
Make no mistake, the scope of this foreign influence threat is both broad and deep.
Now we're being hindered by the Russian hoax. It's a hoax, okay? I'll tell you what, Russia's very unhappy that Trump won.
Jen, why the differing messages?
Well, look, I think, Lynn, there are two cases here. There is the very serious threat faced from Russia for their meddling into our elections, both in 2016 and in these midterms. But there's a second thing, and that is what President Trump is referring to as the Russian hoax, and that is the suggestion that there was some sort of collusion between his campaign and the Russian government, which I don't think happened. And I think 18 months out from the special counsel's investigation, we've seen no evidence that that actually happened. So I think that's the difference here. Look, I think the officials yesterday shared with the press that they have the full backing of President Trump on this. And look, I wish that the Obama administration, when they had the exact same information that the Trump administration had, I wish that the Obama administration had elected officials roll out to the White House podium and speak about this Russian threat and advise Americans to be on alert during the elections. That's something that the Obama administration, that information they had in their pocket in the fall of 2016 and did not share with the American people, which I think was a big dereliction of duty.
So, Lauren, you hear Jen talking there. She's saying, listen, he's not saying that the Russians didn't try and influence the election. He's saying there is no collusion. What do you make of that argument?
Well, you have to look at actually the actions, not just of the White House, but also of the agencies that are responsible for protecting our country from cyber attacks and for protecting our elections. On May 15th, John Bolton fired the lead cybersecurity expert in the White House in the name of streamlining White House bureaucracy. But the reality is there's now nobody who's actually responsible for coordinating the federal government's response. And further, the president has tweeted on multiple occasions that he thinks if there was Russian interference, that it favored the Democrats or it will favor the Democrats. And the problem with that is that this cannot be a political issue. This is about the sovereignty of our democracy and the sovereignty of our nation. And every national security expert has said that it's incredibly frustrating that the president, while it is fantastic that his team is now coming out and taking a strong response, that you need the president, who's the primary diplomat and voice for the nation, speaking out forcefully against this. Otherwise, it frankly invites additional bad actors. And the politicization of this is just a disaster. Let's also remember that each individual state is going to have to respond to this. We have the potential for voting machines to be at risk, for the individual campaigns. We've already seen several Senate campaigns attacked. The reality is that to respond to this is going to take an extraordinary level of coordination and seriousness. And unfortunately, I think it's a bit too late. And just to the point on the Obamas, I think that's not entirely fair. First of all, I think they were in the process of understanding the attacks up until the point of the election, and they did expel a number of Russian diplomats for other violations of our democracy. So, they also were concerned about then looking like they were being overly political, which is part of why they did not come forward.
Well,
it's imperfect, but it's a huge issue for our democracy.
Part of the thing here that is so important is what is the message and how is it coming across?
Right.
If your argument here is that he's not qualifying it as saying it was collusion that I'm talking about. The same thing happened when it comes to the anti-media fever. And when we're talking about yesterday, Ivanka Trump saying she does not believe that the press is the enemy of the people. Sarah Sanders having an encounter with Jim Acosta where she would not say that. And then Donald Trump going on Twitter saying, well, what my daughter said was correct. I'm talking about the fake media, the fake news. I mean, what is it about this organization, this White House that can't get on the same page on the message, if what you're saying is true?
Well, you know, speaking of message, yeah, to address Lauren's point about the message not matching on the Russia, President Trump has been out front. He implemented sanctions this past April against 17 of Vladimir Putin's inner circle, both oligarchs and the inner circle of Vladimir Putin's power. He signed congressional sanctions last August, which had huge ramifications on Russia's defense and oil industry. So his actions certainly match the rhetoric. As for the battle against the media, look, Donald Trump and his supporters, and you ask people all over the country how they feel about the press, and it does match what President Trump feels. And you look at the percentage of reporters who are Democrats, 72 of the White House press corps. Of the 72, 0 are Republicans. You look at the presidential debates, you have John Harwood at CNBC last year was caught actually discussing with Democrats what to get President Trump and the other Republican debaters on. You had Donna Brazile, a former Clinton staffer, leaking the debate questions to Hillary Clinton, and the list goes on and on. A lot of media surveys.
Part of the thing that we've been talking about is whether or not those messages are being interpreted by his base as accurate, whether or not they're informed on some of these things. Jen Kerns, Lauren Leader, I wish we had more time to get into that, but we don't. I apologize, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.